The year is 1939, and the world teeters on the brink of technological warfare as the Nazis deploy the Enigma, an unbreakable encryption machine that coordinates their attacks with deadly precision. And now the Allied forces face a new challenge. And so in a race against time, they turn to Alan Turing, a visionary mathematician. But traditional code-breaking methods are obsolete against the Enigma, prompting Turing to envision a new machine. His creation? The first computer. Not just a code breaker, but the bedrock for the modern digital world, thus beginning the era of computing and redefining not only warfare, but the future of all human civilization.
Computers are supposed to make life easier. About 1 in 3 American households has bought that theory and purchased a PC.
But what really worries me today is what's going to happen to us if machines can think. And what interests me specifically is, can they?
I'm convinced that machines can and will think. I don't mean that machines will behave like men. I don't think for a very long time we're going to have a difficult problem distinguishing a man from a robot. And I don't think my daughter will ever marry a computer. But I think that computers will be doing the things that men do when we say they're thinking. I'm convinced that machines can and will think in our lifetime.
The year is 1946. And now every military in the world knows the power of computers and wants one of their own. But the current technology used to power computers is inefficient. They're using vacuum tubes, which works kind of like giant light bulbs, because they require a lot of manual labor to maintain, leaving some military computers to be the size of a warehouse. And so this gets all of the top scientists in the world to thinking there has to be a better, more efficient way to power the computers. And so in 1947, a brilliant physicist enters the picture. His name is Bill Shockley, and he imagined a new way to power computers using the element germanium to create something called a semiconductor. And it turns out that the semiconductor is the perfect solution, because in between materials like metals that conduct electricity and insulators like rubber and glass that block electricity, a semiconductor can do both, enabling it to act almost like an electrical switch. This eventually becomes known as the transistor, which will completely change technology forever. But even though the applications for the transistor are still just theoretical, it doesn't stop the smartest people in the world from seeing the future of computers, because now the future of computing power has been shrunk down to the size of a fingertip.
It's a transistor, no bigger than a kernel of corn,
which causes some of the most brilliant minds to start imagining a future with super powerful computers exhibiting artificial intelligence.
Can machines really think? Even the scientists argue that one.
Until I see a machine producing genuinely new things, I will not agree that machines think.
I confidently expect that within a matter of 10 or 15 years, something will emerge from the laboratories which is not too far from the robot of science fiction fame.
So in 1950, Alan Turing introduced us to the imitation game, also known as the Turing test, which is the test to determine if a machine can exhibit intelligent behavior indistinguishable from that of a human, fundamentally questioning the limits of artificial and human intelligence. And now, the power of AI is forever etched into the human psyche.
A world in which a new machine may be of even greater importance than the atomic bomb.
This new fascination into computers forces top universities like Harvard, MIT, and Princeton to begin offering degrees in computer science. And when you combine that with the fact that computer engineers were becoming one of the highest paid forms of skilled labor, all the world's smartest people began to flock to these programs. One of these people is Marvin Minsky, a 23-year-old PhD candidate at Princeton University. Inspired by Alan Turing's paper on artificial intelligence, Minsky would build the world's first working neural net using wires and 6 vacuum tubes as the synapses. But even though the vacuum tubes would fail regularly, the machine still worked and ultimately laid the foundation for the field of artificial intelligence and the bedrock that's the neural network.
When I'm going to school in the 1950s, there had been some theories of what neural networks could do.
Fast forward a few years, and now Bill Shockley's invention of the transistor has led to the transistor radio, and it quickly becomes the highest-selling consumer electronic device of all time. And now, the world gets its first taste of the power of compact electronics, and so everyone begins to imagine the possibilities of what the transistor can do.
One will be able to make a flat television tube, for example.
This leads Bill Shockley, the transistor's inventor, to leave his job at Bell Labs and start Shockley Semiconductor, a company geared towards manufacturing the transistor. But Shockley can't do it alone. So he began to rate PhD programs in electronic companies for bright young minds. People like Gordon Moore, a chemist at Johns Hopkins, and Robert Noyce, a PhD from MIT and an up-and-coming rock star in the world of transistors. All in all, Shockley enlists 12 other geniuses to join Shockley Semiconductor with them. And so after being founded in 1954, Shockley Semiconductor becomes the talk of the town because Shockley is determined to place the company in his hometown of Palo Alto, officially making it just the third tech startup ever to be headquartered in Silicon Valley. But it wouldn't last long, because in 1956, just a few months after Shockley would be given the Nobel Prize for the transistor, 8 of the 12 men he personally recruited would defect from Shockley Semiconductor and create their own company, Fairchild Semiconductor, a startup dedicated to manufacturing transistors at scale. And Shockley, being the big mad hater that he is, gives the men the notorious name, the Traitorous 8. And it was perfect timing because within months, Fairchild Semiconductor had already become profitable, selling 100 silicon-based transistors to IBM to power the navigation system for the military's B-70 bomber. And this sale was a landmark moment in the world of computing because it proved that the silicon-based semiconductors were superior to the original germanium-based ones created by Shockley. And the profit margin per transistor was 30 times larger than that of the germanium-based ones. And now the US military needed hundreds, no, thousands of transistors to power everything from computers to ballistic missiles. But the transistor current manufacturing process was inefficient. Half of the ones provided by the military had to be recalled, because all it would take is a simple knock up against the wall for the entire transistor to stop working. And even though Fairchild was known for making the best transistors in the world, this inefficient manufacturing process would pose a huge problem for the entire industry. And so insert random genius number 4, Jean Erny, a physicist at Fairchild that invented a new, more efficient way to manufacture transistors called the planar process. The process was about adding a layer of coating to the top of the transistor to increase the stability and durability of the semiconductor. It was a brilliant and much needed improvement over the semiconductor manufacturing process that would change the world of computing forever. All while making Fairchild Semiconductor richer than ever due to the patent it held over the process. Because now, if anybody wanted to make a transistor, they had to use the planar process, which means they had to pay Fairchild. And so this patent alone leads Wall Street to become freakishly bullish on Fairchild, leading to quarter after quarter of groundbreaking profits and all-time highs on stock price. But with profits soaring fast, Fairchild Semiconductor and the entire industry was still facing a huge problem. You see, the current transistor was limited to scale because it could only do one thing at a time. So if you wanted to do 1,000,000 things, you need 1,000,000 transistors, putting the entire industry at a stalemate. Because most computers were beginning to reach a plateau due to the diminishing limitations of the transistor. This prompted Bob Noyce, the brilliant leader of Fairchild, to create the integrated circuit, a way for transistors to operate together in unison like a network. But if we're being honest, Bob totally took the idea from a Texas Instruments employee named Jack Kilby, who technically created it first. But Jack's version wasn't nearly as good as Bob's. And so to put things into perspective, it kind of reminded me of when Tony Stark was able to build the arc reactor with next to nothing, while every other scientist struggled to recreate it.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps!
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not Tony Stark.
And so Bob Noyce's invention of the integrated circuit created a brand new industry, because now there's a growing global need for transistors, a demand that Fairchild just couldn't fulfill on its own. So this caused a mass exodus of Fairchild Semiconductor employees to leave and start their own semiconductor companies, giving them the name Fairchildren. Companies like LSI Logic, AMD, and Intel, founded by Bob Noyce himself. In fact, still to this day, over 92% of the world's computing power can be traced back to Fairchildren.
You worked at LSI and AMD before starting a company. How did that happen?
They gave me a job.
But by the mid-1960s, demand for the integrated circuit skyrocketed from the US's space race with Russia, and from big businesses demanding their own custom-built computers. But up until this point, the concept of artificial intelligence was still just a science fiction dream. That is until 1966, when a computer scientist at MIT named Joseph Weizenbaum decided to change that by building the world's first chatbot named Eliza using IBM's 7094 computer.
Eliza is a computer program that anyone can converse with via the keyboard, and it'll reply on the screen.
Directly inspired by Marvin Minsky's neural network from a decade earlier, ELIZA simulated conversation by using pattern matching and substitution methodology that gave users the illusion of understanding. But it didn't matter because several people who used ELIZA still felt like they were really talking to a person.
Well, my boyfriend made me come here.
And so now the world was aware of the awe-inspiring power of artificial intelligence and the power of computers. And so in 1971, Intel landed a contract with a Japanese company named Busicom to build a series of integrated circuit transistors for Busicom's new advanced forecasting calculator. But the requirements for the customized integrated circuit were just too complicated to build it using the current technology. And so Intel realized that no form of the integrated circuit could solve the problem. And so they needed to think outside of the box. And so a young engineer at Intel named Ted Hoffner realized that the only way to make the requirements simpler was to build a tiny computer itself that could process all of the requests independently and efficiently. He called it a microprocessor, a computer that's the size of your fingertips.
This was a series of small steps in trying to improve the Busicom design that finally led to what ultimately became the 4004, the first microprocessor.
And so Intel's invention of the microprocessor ushers in a new wave of thinking towards computers, because for the first time, computers can now get small enough and cheap enough to fit on a desk. But unfortunately, there's very few companies focusing strictly on building actual computers themselves. This gap inspired dozens of entrepreneurs to come in and fill that need. So by the late 1970s, we get Microsoft and Apple, the founding of the two richest companies in the world today that will lay the groundwork for modern computing.
Over 97% of the kids that graduate from high school have hands-on experience with an Apple before they graduate. These kids are growing up learning how to use this new tool in many, many phases of their life. And so very rapidly, the process of the integration of personal computers into the society will be accomplished.
And these companies forged the road that led to the PC boom of the 80s and early 90s, single-handedly capturing 96% of the PC market between them. But even though computers were selling like hotcakes year over year, the biggest artificial intelligence breakthroughs during the time wasn't in computing, but rather in the world of math. Because in 1986, a brilliant British computer scientist named Geoffrey Hinton created backpropagation, which is a machine learning algorithm that acts like a teacher who helps the computer learn from its mistakes. It checks the computer's answers, sees where it went wrong, and then gives it tips on how it can improve the next time. Immediately, the backpropagation becomes the cornerstone for all neural nets, inspiring companies like Ward Systems to invent NeuroShell, one of the world's first forecasting tools using backpropagation and machine learning. But neural nets wasn't the only way that AI was advancing, because in 1997, IBM built Deep Blue, an AI program that used a highly sophisticated search algorithm, a database of games played, and combined it with brute force computing power to beat the world's best chess player. But little did they know at the time, IBM's win gave the blueprint for the future of AI, which is when you combine large volumes of data, strong algorithms, and a lot of compute power, you can build something super intelligent. But more on that later, because by the late 90s, the power of computers combined with the internet has taken over humanity. Because now new millionaires are being minted overnight by building companies that are taking our analog world digital.
Well, if you do your social networking on the net, then you know about Facebook.com. The website is the latest and hottest thing. Its founder is a 22-year-old computer whiz who turned down, get this, $1 billion to sell his site to Yahoo.
The creation of internet companies like Google, Amazon, and Facebook brings about the information age. And now, there are hundreds of companies generating more data every year than all of humanity did in a century. So this creates a new need for computers to be able to analyze all of this big amounts of data. So top companies start paying the world's best computer scientists for new and innovative ways to analyze the data. Which brings us back to Geoffrey Hinton. Remember him? The young computer scientist that helped create backpropagation? Well, he's no longer a student. Now he's a professor at the University of Toronto that's training the next generation of minds in AI. And all of this big data being generated by these new internet companies renews his interest in the idea of neural nets and finding ways to take them to the next level. So in 2006, Geoffrey Hinton created a new algorithm called the convolutional neural network, a way that computers can begin to think, recognize patterns, and even images. and convolutional neural networks instantly become a hit amongst tech giants. Facebook and Google uses them to tag and recognize photos. Amazon uses it as a way to recommend the next product that you will buy, and Apple uses it as a cool way to unlock your phone. Now, this algorithm becomes so important to the AI community that it gives Geoffrey Hinton a new name, the Godfather of AI.
Whether you think artificial intelligence will save the world or end it, you have Geoffrey Hinton to thank. Hinton has been called the godfather of AI.
You're seen as like a godfather of this industry. Do you have any concern about what you've wrought?
A British computer scientist whose controversial ideas help make advanced artificial intelligence possible and so change the world.
But even though every major tech company is finding useful ways to use convolutional neural networks to analyze the data, everyone knows that there's still a huge opportunity to unlock true intelligence. So in 2007, a professor out of Caltech named Dr. Fei-Fei Li launched ImageNet, a new competition dedicated to providing the world's largest open source data set in order to find the best algorithm in the world that can exhibit true intelligence.
We were thrilled to have put together ImageNet, and we wanted the whole research world to benefit from it. We opened up the entire data set for free.
So for a few years, she announces the winners, but nothing happened. That is until 2012, where our old friend Geoffrey Hinton decided to enter the competition with two of his students, Ilya Sutskever and Alex Krivetsky. Together, they submit their CNN model called AlexNet. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this moment is so big in the AI world that they literally call it the Big Bang of AI.
The Big Bang of deep learning, the Big Bang of modern AI.
It's universally known as the day that AI was born. But hold up, because the AlexNet algorithm wasn't the only thing that powered the AI model. Because do you remember the formula to AI that IBM laid out with Deep Blue? Data plus model plus compute? Well, guess what? The real secret here was the GPU computing power behind it created by NVIDIA.
Geoff Hinton reached out to us and we started hearing about that. And
yeah, I guess 2012 was also the year when AlexNet came out.
Yeah, we started feeling it. We started hearing about it before that. And then ImageNet kind of, it was the big bang, if you will, got all of our attention. Yeah.
And it was this breakthrough that forced NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang to completely ditch development of the company's core product, which up until that point was graphics cards for video games. And now, Jensen has decided to bet the farm on the future of AI by building the most powerful microchips in the world that will power them. A bet that will totally pay off almost a decade later. Because as of today, NVIDIA is currently the third richest company in the world because they power 92% of the world's AI.
The California-based company saw its stock market value soar from $1 trillion to $2 trillion in just 8 months, fueled by the insatiable demand for its cutting-edge technology, the hardware and software that make today's artificial intelligence possible.
But NVIDIA going all in 2012 only causes Google to follow suit, except they don't focus on computing power. Instead, they decide to focus on dominating the space of breakthrough algorithms.
Google is buying DeepMind, an artificial intelligence company, for an unknown amount of money that may exceed actually $500 million.
So they buy up and hire every brilliant mind in the world of AI, including DNN Research, the company founded by our good buddy Geoffrey Hinton and his two students that were on ImageNet. And by 2015, Google has a complete monopoly on the frontier AI model space. But Google's hoarding of AI talent starts to concern a lot of Silicon Valley billionaires like Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk. You see, like many of us, they're worried that if the world built a true super intelligent AI and the only people with access to it was a closed source for-profit company, well, let's just say there's a half a dozen movies showing us why that's a bad idea. So to fight back against Google, Elon and the gang decided to start OpenAI, an open source, nonprofit company geared towards building AGI safely. But there's only one problem. None of them are AI geniuses, and there's no way to compete with Google without the talent. So Elon decides to personally recruit Ilya Sutskever from Google. You remember him? He was one of the 3 minds behind AlexNet and a direct student of Geoffrey Hinton. And so Elon works his magic and steals Ilya from Google. But Elon's recruitment of Ilya Sutskever doesn't come without a cost because he loses a lifelong friend in Larry Page. But this new rivalry supercharges Larry Page, so he triples down with Google's investment in DeepMind and AI. So in 2016, DeepMind builds AlphaGo, an AI program that beat the strongest Go player in the world, followed directly by AlphaZero, a chess program that does the same. And these apps instantly validate DeepMind and Google as kings of the AI world. But they weren't done, because in 2017, Google also stumbled across Transformers.
Autobots, roll out. We roll.
Nah, not those Transformers. I'm talking about the AI model, which is now one of the most powerful AI tools around. And so I want you to think of Transformers as super smart robots that can read a lot of books really fast.
Holy crow, you can read!
But these new Transformer models get the entire AI world thinking. But what if we throw a bunch of text data at Transformers and then have humans talk to them to train them? Could we build a better version of Elijah, the chatbot from the 1960s? And several companies all have the same idea, the most notable of which is OpenAI. But there's a big problem in the plan. Remember, building AI requires a lot of computing power, which in turn requires a lot of capital. Capital that they don't have, despite having the richest man in the world as a co-founder. And now, OpenAI knows that it needs a minimum of $1 billion to even compete with Google. So they decide to broker a deal with Microsoft to give them the money necessary to build AI applications in exchange for capped profits. But this decision totally pisses off Elon, because from his perspective, the entire purpose of OpenAI was to be open source, and the deal with Microsoft only leads the company right back to the road that DeepMind and Google were on. This rift leads to Elon leaving OpenAI and Sam Altman becoming the sole CEO of the company. So in 2020, with Sam acting as CEO, he manages to procure a $10 billion investment from Microsoft. And now, fueled by this new fusion of capital, OpenAI launched an updated version of Elijah, a chatting, generative, pre-trained transformer in 2022. And within months, the tool reaches 100 million users, becoming the fastest growing app in history. But during this year, ChatGPT wasn't the only AI app making waves, because during the same year, other companies like 11 Labs, Midjourney, and Stability AI all launched groundbreaking generative AI tools for audio and images, sending the entire world into the age of AI. And that brings us to today. And now 2 years of explosive AI growth has fueled the industry more than ever. And now over $40 billion a year is being invested in AI startups. And NVIDIA and Microsoft are now 2 of the 3 richest companies in the world, all because of their bets on AI. And startups like OpenAI are now seeking over $7 trillion in investment to begin this long-term bet on AI chips and robotic production. But it's unclear where the technology will go from here. And if you want to learn more, then I highly suggest that you read this book called Chip War by Chris Miller. It's a really amazing read. I'll put the link in the description below. Chip War explains the intense level of R&D that went into the AI industry over the years, and it explains why companies like NVIDIA, TSMC, and ASML are all skyrocketing in value. And if you're looking for more history on artificial intelligence, then go watch this video about how NVIDIA built the monopoly on GPUs. It's a really good story. And thanks for watching.